Hello, my name is Ditta Rietuma and I'm Baltic Sea Regional Office Secretary for Radioactivity Risk Operation I have been lucky to be here in Baltic Beach Hotel at the seashore of Baltic Sea with experts Michael Hudson and Sommers, and they have been nice to join me in the discussion about this beautiful sea that we have here, Baltic Sea, the most radioactive sea in the world. And I have told a bit of information about the subject, how it got contaminated. And Michael Hudson, you are the expert about the economical aspects of the situation of Latvia in the world, and so is Sommers. And could you give some of your comment about the economical situation Latvia is in right now?
Well, yes, currently we've been looking at how Latvia has been pursuing an internal devaluation strategy to deal with an economic crisis, which we predicted back in 2005. In fact, even going back to 2004, it was quite obvious to us that Latvia was building up an asset inflation based on property prices rising out of proportion to the underlying productivity of its economy. At that time, my colleague Dr. Michael Hudson suggested that a solution to this problem would be to levy a tax on land, not property, but on land, in order to take prices down on property to ensure that this property bubble would not occur, while at the same time ensuring that your land and your property would be better utilized because there would be a cost for not using it. The crisis, as you know, materialized as we predicted. We have been now called back by one of your political parties to provide counsel on what steps might be taken next. On Thursday, we spoke with the director of your central bank, Mr. Ilmars Rimšēvičs. We spoke to him about our potential solutions to these problems, and we're continuing to engage your policymakers in dialogue regarding potential solutions to the economic problems that we see here currently. We, of course, are quite concerned by the large numbers of people which are leaving the country. It's very beautiful here, but as you know, many people are suffering greatly during this crisis, and we believe that the very risk of Latvia, its future is at risk, that it cannot survive unless its people stay, establish families, and right now that is not happening in Latvia.
Okay. Michael?
We've been meeting with the bank agencies here, and they've told us that there's been a 30% cut in wages. They say that is not enough. They want to cut wages further, probably by another 20%. To the Latvian bankers, who are acting basically, it seems to us, on behalf of the Swedish bankers, Latvian living standards have to fall by 50%. We don't think that's necessary. Wages, the cost of labor to employers could be cut by 50% simply by removing the tax on labor. Latvia has the highest tax on labor in the entire world. More than 50% of the cost of labor to employers is paid on taxes, so that property owners don't have to pay tax. And so the wealthy people don't have to pay tax. No other country in the world that calls itself a democracy would stand for this. There's less than a 1% tax on land. If you shift the tax system off labor onto the land, you will first of all reduce the cost of labor by 50% without reducing labor's wage at all. And then by taxing the land, you will reduce the cost of housing, which absorbs 40%, we were told, of the Latvian budget. So without reducing labor's living standards at all, you could have cut the cost of employment to the employers by 75%. So our message to Latvia is, it doesn't have to be this way. You don't have to leave the central planning of your economy in the hands of bankers instead of in the hands of elected officials who can put the tax where America put it, where it developed. America used to have 80% of its government revenues come from the land, not from labor. Every country seeks to lower the labor cost, and the way to do it is to shift the shift the tax off the labor, off capital, off industry, off agriculture, into what is created by nature. The land, natural resources, and natural monopolies. This is what the real liberals from Adam Smith, John Stuart Mill advocated in the 19th century, and we have been explaining that to various political parties while we've been here, that what Latvians are told is liberalism is a travesty of free markets. It's the exact opposite of free markets. To Adam Smith and John Stuart Mill, a free market was a market free of rent where labor received what it produced, not be taxed to support the landowners, and especially taxed to support the bankers. In effect, the international relations today is no longer military, it's financial. And the Swedish banks essentially have been able to obtain the fruits of Latvian labor and obtain the land and make Latvia pay tribute, but the tribute is not military tribute, it takes the form of financial interest. All of this is unnecessary. It doesn't have to be that way, and that's our message to Latvia.
Thank you, Michael. I was just thinking about this message about nuclear waste cemeteries being built in Sweden and Finland, and they are not far, at the very shore of the Baltic Sea coast. And Latvians don't even know about it, and it doesn't feel right that people are not informed. It feels like some sort of nuclear colonization because people don't know, and the areas are being used without reasonable process.
The cost of nuclear waste disposal is a cost that has not been adequately factored into the budgets of nuclear power. When you take the cost of waste disposal into account, the nuclear power plants that seem to be economic now are not. Well, what they're doing is finding a very cheap way to the industry of disposing of waste by making the environment pay. So their idea of saving costs is we, the industry, don't have to pay the cost. You, not only you who receive the nuclear waste will have to pay the cost. The fact is there's a very great danger of nuclear waste. If anything goes wrong, you'll have the equivalent of the huge oil spill that you've had in the United States, and it will be like a potential Chernobyl of nuclear waste. What happens when there is a leak? What happens if you try to send the nuclear waste by rocket into the sun and the rocket breaks and all the waste comes back to Earth? What happens if you put nuclear waste in a cave, there's a leak, it all goes into the Baltic, then all of the neighboring areas will be affected around the Baltic, Latvia included. So the Swedes get the money for the waste, the Latvians get the fallout. This is very much like debt. Latvia has an environmental problem of debt pollution coming from the Swedish credit creation. It's virtually the same thing with nuclear power, that just as Latvia's had to pay the cleanup costs for Sweden's bad credit creation and bad loans, so Latvia would have to pay the cleanup costs if anything goes wrong with the Swedish nuclear disposal.
And just to finish on a great line, we have been discussing this possibility to get from the pyramidal structure to the sun system structure, where the most intellectual and wise and spiritual sources of information will be able to provide the light to everybody, as in the sun system, instead of the pyramidal. That is what we are all working for in the economy and in the social sciences and the ecology, and let's hope that it will work out and we will get there all together.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.